Friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. At such moments, I almost always remember my time in the desert. I think this is quite reasonable, considering that I'm looking at my target through a scope. Only now my target is not a terrorist or even a criminal. In fact, in this case, I am the culprit. My target is a balding, sweaty, slightly overweight banker, at this very moment plowing the field of one of his subordinates from the bank. Why am I aiming at him? Well, because I have a contract to end his life. Someone, and I have no idea who, ordered the murder of this man. They paid with cryptocurrency, and everything was organized through the darknet. I will never meet the person who made the order, and I have no connections with either the subject or his mistress. By the time the law enforcement agencies receive the alarm, I will be gone, and I am very careful not to leave any traces that can point to me. I'm still watching through the scope for a while. I'm not a voyeur, but I need to find a way to shoot. I adjusted the scope a little, examining the part of the room that I could see through the window. There is no one except the copulating couple. I looked at her. She's a good prize. The contract states that she should not be harmed, and she will not be harmed, at least physically. I can't predict how it will affect her psyche if she sees her lover's head explode when he goes to the bathroom to take a leak. I looked around for a second. It is not necessary to fixate on the goal in such a way that you yourself are in danger. I have neither an observer nor a cover. It's just me here, so I have to make sure my position is secure. And that's the way it is. I'm on the roof of the building across the street from the hotel where the cheater lives. I return to the scope and see that it is close to completion. I tune in again, check that nothing has changed in the conditions, and at that moment he arches his back, shouting his climax. He shudders once, twice, 3 times and freezes. Then he gets off her. As expected, he heads to the bathroom. I pull the trigger. I leave before she even starts screaming, and by the time law enforcement is around, I'm already miles away. I put my gear in one of several vaults that I have all over the city, each with different names and prepaid in cash, before heading home. During the trip, I think again about how I ended up here. How come I'm now a hitman specializing almost exclusively in eliminating cheating spouses? Well, in terms of shooting, everything is simple. I've always been good with a rifle. From early childhood, when I was hunting on a farm, I developed an attachment to guns, especially rifles, which meant that I could make shots that hit everyone else. It's almost instinctive. When I joined the Marines and then the sniper school, we were taught all kinds of trajectories, wind resistance, ballistics, and other sciences. I learned all this, but I just didn't need it. I can make a shot with my eye, which many snipers cannot do even with all their calculations and computers. It's just a natural instinctive ability. There is no doubt that I would have achieved great success in the Marine Corps, but then something happened that changed my life forever and became the reason why I began specializing in cheating spouses. You've already guessed it. Cheating spouse. Gabrielle is a French-born girl, a petite dark-haired woman whom we met at a bar in the city while on vacation. She is lively and attractive, and her body evokes all sorts of unclean thoughts. She spent the whole evening with us, and my best friend Bobby and I took turns dancing with her. By the end of the evening, it became obvious that there was something between her and Bobby, and with a bitter smile I did the only thing my best friend could do, wished him luck, and returned to base alone. After that, every time they went to the city, they were inseparable. I either started the evening as a third extra, trying to find my own company as the evening progressed, or sometimes she brought a friend to keep me company while she and Bobby had fun with each other. I was surprised when, after 3 months of dating, Bobby came to me to show me the ring he had bought for her. "Wow, Bobby," I said, "that's a rock. Are you sure you're ready for this?" He chuckled. "When you know," he said, assuming the pose of an old sage. I won't let her go. The look in her eyes when Bobby got down on one knee in the bar that night made me think. I expected her to be excited and happy, but calculation flashed across her face before she showed the expected emotions. I didn't say anything to Bobby because I didn't want to spoil his moment, but I was interested. I organized the bachelor party because I was the best man, and although these are my words, it was epic. All the ingredients were there. All 3 B's were present. The guys, half the platoon showed up, booze. We had to put Bobby back in his bunk that night, and he barely remembered anything about what was there and the women. Of course, there were strippers. This is a must. However, I tried to protect Bobby's virtue and made sure that nothing untoward happened to him. When I organized the party, I talked to Gabrielle beforehand to find out her boundaries. If she had said no strippers, there wouldn't have been any. I didn't want Bobby to get divorced before the wedding. The wedding was small. Her parents, a few of her friends, and a few guys from our platoon. I was, as I said, the best man. 2 months later, we were sent back to the desert for 3 months of service. I'll remember that patrol for the rest of my life. We were instructed to search the village where, according to our information, the rebels could be located. I have already scouted with my spotter and found a place where I could provide surveillance for the guys. The situation was not ideal, as I still couldn't see some places, but this option was the best. Bobby was out of sorts all day. He seemed overly eager to get there and was harsh with everyone, even me, which was unusual. When I asked him what the problem was, he just grinned and said he just couldn't wait to hit the road. Bobby never returned from that patrol. I didn't see what happened, since his position was out of view from my observation post, but his team said that when they made contact with the enemy, Bobby stood up, shouted something like, "Go ahead, bastards," and rushed towards them, firing from the hip with his M16 like some gangster James Cagney. He didn't even run 3 meters. As his best friend, I was instructed to pack his things for shipment to the USA, and that's when I found the letter. Dear Bobby, I know this is the coward's way, but I need to tell you that I dated someone else and we fell in love. I'm leaving you so that he and I can be together. I want you to know that I really loved you, but the time spent apart showed that I'm not really in love with you, and you deserve more, so it would be better if we broke up, and you can find someone who will love you so much as you deserve. Please don't think too badly of me. John says you still have a month left on the tour, so by the time you get back, I'll be moving out of our house. I'm not going to demand anything from you during the divorce, and I'll be glad to consider you a friend if you find the strength in your heart to forgive me. With best wishes, Gabrielle. Damn fool, I shouted after reading the letter. Now I understood Bobby's behavior and decided that the reckoning had to come. I was assigned to escort Bobby's body back to the USA, which interrupted my tour. We unloaded the coffin, and Gabrielle came up to him, tears streaming down her face. She put her hand on the coffin, and I said, "Don't you dare, you're a traitor." She took a stunned step back, and then I noticed the officer accompanying her, Colonel John Edwards. "What the hell?" he began, putting his arm around her shoulders. "How dare you?" "How dare I said. This treacherous fool planted a letter, Dear John, to a soldier on active duty right before patrolling. What did she think would happen? When I find out who this little fool she's with is. Stand down, Marine, Colonel Edwards growled. I didn't know she sent him a letter. I told her to wait. And we did. You? I asked incredulously. Have you met with the wife of one of your subordinates? It's simple, he began. My first punch hit him in the throat, bringing him to his knees. A kick to the groin knocked him to the ground, and I punched him in the face 4 more times while he was lying on the ground before the police got to me. My greatest satisfaction was that we were both sentenced to a military tribunal, him for inappropriate behavior and me for hitting a senior officer. I spent a year in a military prison for assault, after which I was dishonorably discharged, and he was simply kicked out of the service, deprived of his pension. It took me another year to find her. She moved to Canada and lived with a French-Canadian businessman. I had no idea what happened to Colonel Edwards. He got lost on the way. I was thinking of just shooting her from a distance. It's so simple. No guards, no surveillance, a simple woman in public. How to fish in a barrel, but then she would never have known what killed her and why. I needed it to be more personal. I needed her to understand who killed her and why. In the end, she made everything easier for me. She was at a dance with her friends. Obviously, she was still cheating, since the guy who was currently running his tongue down her throat was not her French-Canadian businessman. I watched from the bar as he whispered something in her ear. She nodded, and they moved towards the exit. I went out the front door and walked around the bar. I guessed where they were going and wasn't disappointed when I saw them heading towards the SUV in the parking lot. I was waiting by my car to see if they were going anywhere, but when he opened the back door of the SUV, I realized that it would be here and now. Looking around for anyone or surveillance, I moved closer until I saw Gabrielle, or rather, Gabrielle's ass, sticking out of the back door, and a guy pushing into her, bending her over the car seat. I didn't want to kill the guy. I have no complaints about him, so I quickly strangled him, and he fell unconscious to the floor. It took Gabrielle a few seconds to realize that the tremors had stopped. She got out of the car and turned to face me, looking down the barrel of my Glock 9. Her eyes widened when she recognized me, and she opened her mouth to speak. I beat her to it. Bobby says hi, you idiot. I pulled the trigger twice, putting 2 bullets in her chest, and she was thrown back into the car. I disappeared before the sound of gunfire reached the bar, and less than 4 hours later I returned across the border to the United States. Revenge for Bobby gave me an idea. Surely there are some number of people who are being cheated on at this moment. Some of them will want to reconcile, others will want a divorce. But there will also be those who want to find a more permanent solution to the problem of cheating on their spouse, and I have all the necessary skills to do this. And so I became a killer, in particular, one who attacks those who go beyond their marriage. It's an easy job. In general, these are ordinary people. They practically do not know that they are a target and do not have personal protection. I had been practicing my craft for about 4 years and was making quite a lot of money when I met Juliana. Juliana is a financial manager at a car dealership that I visited when I wanted to buy a new car. She is a bright, intelligent, and interesting conversationalist. It didn't hurt that she was almost 6 feet tall in heels, with legs that lasted for miles, long blue-black hair, and an ass to die for. We instantly found a common language, and after half an hour she agreed to a date with me. I won't bore you with the dancing, which was courtship. Suffice it to say that a year and a half later, Juliana and I were married in a lavish wedding with more than 200 guests, consisting of her friends and family, my parents, and several of my old sea buddies who still communicate with me. For the whole world and Juliana, I was a successful money management financial manager, spending most of my working time on the computer at home, but, if necessary, regularly traveling around the country. It's the perfect cover for my real job. Life with Juliana was good. She supported my money management work even when I had to leave on business. She always welcomed me back with sessions in the bedroom, where she was wild and uninhibited. Even when I was at home, we made love at least 4 or 5 times a week, and sometimes much more often. She never went with the girls. Although she had many friends, we always went together. If they went dancing, she accepted, with my blessing, invitations to dance from other men, but always ensured that their behavior, like hers, met her husband's requirements. I have never doubted that she loves me, as I love her. The contracts came through the darknet, and I was paranoid about accepting them. He never met in person, dealt only via the internet, demanded irrefutable evidence of infidelity, and they never knew when and where the contract would be fulfilled. The money was transferred to a virtual account with a ban, and was released only after the contract was fulfilled. The money could be returned by me to the client if for some reason I could not fulfill the contract, but so far this has not happened. Since I had no connections with any of the victims, law enforcement agencies never got close to me, and since I use cryptocurrency, even if it could be proved that the person who signed the contract paid a lump sum, her location was completely safe. I have killed many more men than women, about 10 to 1. When a man cheats on a woman, she wants him dead, and when a woman cheats on a man, most often he wants the death of the one with whom she cheated on him. Of course, there have been exceptions, but I have no conscience. This is a job. People are willing to pay me and pay well for my services, and cheaters deserve everything they get. So life went on. After 3 years of marriage, Juliana and I had our first child, and just 18 months later, our second. They grew up in a good stable family and now both go to college, which is fully paid for. Juliana felt a little empty nest and returned to work at the car dealership. I worked most of the day at home, with occasional trips. I have decided that I will retire. 1 or 2 more contracts will complete the pension fund that I was creating, and, to be honest, I'm already tired of the game. I looked at the bulletin board I was using to find a job and saw that there were 2 available contracts. One is in a neighboring state, and the other is on the other side of the country. I decided that the payment of the local contract would allow me to get out of this business, and clicked on the vacancies to start the process of obtaining a contract. The target was a man named Peter Miller. A photo was attached. The dossier indicates that he is a seller of group insurance, which covers 3 states, including ours, and that he travels a lot in his region. He is married to Janine and they have 3 young children, Paul, Mary, and Siobhan. I have reports from a private investigator showing his relationships with 4 different women. He is currently on the road, and his route has brought him within 50 miles of where I live. He's going to stay at a hotel for a week. There is no information that he has a woman, but it is assumed that he has one, and that they will meet during his stay. The contract provides for surveillance of his hotel, and if he appears with a woman who is not his wife, then monitor him constantly. The contract was accompanied by photographs of the man himself, his wife, and 3 children. I always wonder why photos of children are attached, but they are always attached. Whoever compiled the dossier did a good job. It was known not only in which hotel he was staying, but also in which room. I Googled the hotel and found that the room he had booked was on the 5th floor in the eastern part. A quick glance at Google Earth showed that, even if not in the block opposite, construction is underway a quarter later. If I can climb to a high enough floor of this unfinished building, I will have an unobstructed view of the east side of the hotel, since the buildings directly opposite the hotel are only 3 stories high. I have to go on a business trip next week, I told Juliana on Friday evening. I'll leave on Monday morning and come back on Thursday, maybe Friday. She looked up from the book she was reading. I thought you were done with them already? She said. Without complaining, I just asked. This may be the last one, depending on how things go. Maybe there will be another one if this one doesn't live up to expectations. She nodded, then grinned. It means we'll be together all weekend, she said. We didn't spend the whole weekend in bed. After an amazing Friday night, we went out on Saturday, did some mundane things, and then had lunch at our favorite restaurant. We spent Saturday evening and most of Sunday in bed. On Monday morning, I left the house and drove to the airport by car. After parking, I walked about a mile to a nearby warehouse and climbed into an inconspicuous car that I kept there for this purpose. This is a gray Toyota sedan, immediately forgettable. She was registered with a fake ID card, which was reliable enough to pass a police check, but would not have stood up to a deep check. I was in position on the 7th floor of the construction site, aiming the scope at his window, when the target entered the room. He fiddled for a few minutes and then picked up the phone, obviously making a call. After a short conversation, he left the room. It was a little after 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I did not pursue him. I knew that he would return, and I settled down to wait. For some reason, the construction site was closed, so I wasn't afraid of being discovered. When he returned to his room, it was already past 6 in the evening. In obvious haste, he went to the bathroom to take a shower. I watched him as he returned to the bedroom, nothing special. The water in the shower must have been cold, because nothing special was visible between his legs, and his body, although lean, was not particularly inspiring. I often wondered what attracted women to such men, and decided that in the chat he must have a good hang of the language in the chat, because it's definitely not about his physical characteristics. 30 minutes later, he got dressed and went out. I ate and sat down to wait for his return. I was sure he would come back, and probably with some woman. I'll take a photo to prove his infidelity, and then I'll put a bullet in his skull. The contract doesn't say anything about killing or sparing a woman, so I won't kill her. Although I don't mind killing cheaters, I didn't know that this woman was a cheater. Maybe she's just a lonely girl who fell for this jerk's bait. I have no information, and she will stay alive. It was after midnight when the lights finally came back on in the room, and I looked through the scope again. I saw my target enter the room with a tall, dark-haired woman. As soon as they passed through the door, the woman pinned him against the door and fell on her knees in front of him. I couldn't see exactly what was going on, since her back was to me, and I could see him from the torso down because of my position a couple of floors above them, but I wasn't worried. Eventually, they will move further into the room. I could see her head moving back and forth, and after a couple of minutes he put his hands on the back of her head and started moving his hips. It took less than 5 minutes for him to tense up and apparently release his charge into her mouth. I assume she swallowed it, as she didn't spit it out on the carpet unless she handed it to him, as they immediately moved on to kissing after that. Still locked together, they began to take off the rest of their clothes, moving towards the bed. When they reached the bed, she was left in her underwear, and he was naked. He pushed her back onto the bed and started kissing her body. At that moment, It took all my self-control not to pull the trigger. Instead, I snapped the camera that was connected to my scope and took a digital picture. Over the next 3 hours, I took photos and videos of the couple as they fucked in the bedroom. He used it in several different positions and places, even by the window, with the blinds open and the lights on, so they could easily be seen from the street, but they didn't seem to care. Eventually, having had enough, they went to bed to have one last lovemaking session before falling asleep for the night. When the lights went out, I was leaning back in my chair. My heart was pounding, and my thoughts were racing. I opened the photo on my phone, which I took first through the optical site, and looked at it. I zoomed in on that face, looking into those eyes, those beautiful eyes, the eyes of my wife, Juliana. Thoughts were racing through my head. I couldn't finish the murder now. One of the safest things I did was that I was not connected to the victims or their partners. If I kill one or both of them now, the first person the police want to talk to will be me. My alibi won't stand up to such a test. Besides, I'm not in a position to decide what to do with Juliana. Now I'm so angry that I could have put a bullet in her without hesitation, but I knew that the anger would pass, and I need to think not only about myself, but also about my children. I have to think long and hard about what to do with her. I will have to live with my decision for the rest of my life. Another thought was that if I returned the contract, then someone else could pick it up and be less picky about whether to kill this asshole's partner or not. I also had to think about whether this was a setup. Did someone arrange for me to see my wife cheating with this jerk to try to drain me? I didn't think it was law enforcement. They wouldn't have put any of them in my line of sight, because as far as they know, I could have fired tonight, but someone else might be involved, maybe someone connected to one of my previous contracts. Who wants revenge? No, I need to fulfill this contract, but make everything look casual or natural. No follow-up by the police so that we don't get hurt. I'll deal with Juliana later. I packed up all my things and took them to the vault. I won't use them for this job. While I was in the vault, I took some additional electronic devices, and when I returned to the hotel, I found both their cars and installed a GPS tracker on them. The next morning, after they both left, Juliana returned to my house, and he went to do what he was supposed to do here. I entered the hotel and, using an electronic key card, entered his room. I searched the room, finding nothing unexpected. There were several blood pressure medications and some Viagra in his luggage. Then I installed some hidden cameras. I have 4 days to fulfill the contract. Since I had told Juliana that I would not be back until Thursday or Friday, I did not need to communicate with her too much, although I knew that she would call me today. I also booked a hotel room using my fake ID. Everything will be easier if I stay at the hotel legally. I looked around and found that surveillance cameras were installed only at the entrance and in the elevators. There are none on the stairs or in the corridors near the rooms. During the day, I watched their movements while simultaneously making my own preparations. Juliana was at work, then went to the gym, then returned home. After a while, his tracker showed that he was heading towards my house, and I swore to myself that if she let this asshole into my house, I would kill them both on principle, and I don't care about the consequences. Fortunately, he didn't drive closer than 5 blocks to my house. Just after 6 in the evening, Juliana called me. "Hi, baby," she said. "Hi, honey, I missed you last night. I thought you'd call." "I'm sorry, I fell asleep in front of the TV, and when I woke up, it was already late," she said without the slightest pause. "That's what I thought. That's why I didn't bother you," I said, clenching my fist. It was the first time Juliana had lied to me. Obviously, there were others, but I just didn't know about them. "How are things going with your meeting?" "What is it?" she asked. There was an unexpected complication. Someone suddenly appeared at the meeting, and this raised some questions. I am sure that I will be able to make a deal, but it may take a little longer, and it will be a little more difficult. However, once everything is done, I will no longer go on business trips, I said. "So you'll be back on Friday instead of Thursday?" I could have sworn I heard a smile in her voice. "You don't seem too disappointed," I replied rather tartly. "Oh, no, not at all. I was just glad when you said that this was your last business trip. If an extra day in this one means it's the last one, then it's worth it," she said. He reacts well, I thought, but instead I asked, "So, what are you doing tonight?" "I just got back from the gym, so I'm going to lie in front of the TV," she said, "and go to bed early. I have to work too." Well, do you remember what my mother always told me? I joked. If you're not in bed by 11, you have to go home. She laughed. I'll call you tomorrow night. I miss you. Good night. I don't know if she noticed that I just hung up without saying anything further. The last call was to my friend. He is a chemist and sometimes supplies me when my preferred method of killing is not suitable. Sometimes people want things to look more natural. This usually raises the price, but in this case, I am willing to suffer losses. By the time I got back to the hotel after seeing my friend, the asshole had already returned, and when I connected to the camera, I heard his phone ring. "Hi, Jules," I heard him say, and I shuddered. Juliana hated it when her name was shortened in any way. If it was her, and she let him call her Jules, it only made the situation worse. It's strange that such little things matter. The conversation continued. "No, I came back late. Give me an hour to pack up and I'll meet you downstairs? Say at 7:30? Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to make you squeal tonight. I'll make you forget that miserable asshole you married," he said gleefully. "No, no, Juliana," he said. "I didn't mean to. I know he didn't. Don't, baby. Please. Julie." He looked at his phone. "Damn it," he shouted fiercely. I smiled grimly to myself. It sounded like he was losing a night of passion. My phone rang. It's Juliana. "Hi, baby, how are you?" I asked in surprise. "Nothing," she said. "I just remembered that I didn't say that I love you when we were talking. And I just wanted to make sure you knew that." She sounded a little upset. "Are you okay?" I asked. "You don't sound right." "I'm fine," she replied. "I just miss you, that's all." I heard her phone beep, informing me that a call had been received. I looked at my computer and saw that the goat was talking on his phone and guessed that he was calling her. "Why don't we have a little chat then?" I said. "It's going to be almost like I'm there." I was waiting to see what decision she would make. Continue chatting with me or go back to talking to the jerk so that he can charm her for another night of love. She chose the wrong decision. "No, I'm just stupid. Listen, my mom is trying to call me. I just wanted to say that I love you. Good night." The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. "Good night, Jules," I said and hung up. I wonder if she noticed. Back in the asshole's room, I heard his phone ring, and he smiled as he picked up the phone. "Hi, baby. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I know you don't like it when I say nasty things about him. It's just my insecurity. I just want to be the best lover for you and know that I make you feel as good as you make me feel." "No, I won't." "Okay, tomorrow then? How about we invite you to dinner at the Archies? Can I book a table for 7? "Yes, I know. I'm sorry about that." "Yes, I love you too, Juliana. Good night." "I love you too?" I thought. It means that she confessed her love to him. Was it just a reflex way to end the conversation? Or did she actually love this asshole? I'll find out tomorrow. Shortly after that, I heard him call room service and order food and a couple bottles of beer. I decided it was time to make my move. I waited for the food to be brought to the room and for the hotel employee to leave. Just as he sat down to eat, I knocked on his door. I stood aside so that he wouldn't see me through the peephole, but I don't think he even looked. He opened the door and looked at me. The surprise on his face as he stared down the barrel of my Glock with a silencer was priceless. "Good evening, Peter," I said pleasantly. "May I come in?" His mouth worked soundlessly for a moment, but I moved forward and he instinctively stepped back. The door closed behind me. "What do you need?" he asked. "I have about $500 in my wallet. You can take it and—" "Nothing so rude," I said. "I just want to have a nice chat, as a friend. You see, my employer, I think you know her, this is your wife Janine, asked me to give some answers. And you, my beautiful friend, will give them to me. I already have a lot of information, but there are gaps that need to be filled in. So if you lie to me, I'll find out and shoot you." He turned pale. "I don't really want to shoot you," I continued. "It's so much like hard work, and your good wife would rather just get divorced and humiliate you. Financially, you're more important to her alive than dead, and she thinks your kids will miss you if you die, but she wants to know the whole truth about your dirty deeds. Make no mistake, she will stalk every one of the women you cheat with and tell their husbands what they've been up to. If you tell me everything, completely and right now, I will leave this room without having to clean up your corpse." Does that sound reasonable? I took a bottle of beer, uncorked the cork, and handed it to him, and I uncorked the second one and took a sip. I frowned. Is this the best thing they do here? I asked. He looked at me, a glint of hope in his eyes. So if I tell you everything you want to know, you won't shoot me? He asked. I won't shoot you. I'm going to leave and let you get on with your life. I would suggest that you call your wife after I leave, and maybe if you humiliate yourself enough, she can even take you back, if only for the sake of your children. I pointed to one of the chairs. He sat down. What do you want to know? He asked. There are 4 women about whom I know almost everything I need to know. I listed their names and the places where they live. His mouth dropped open. I also know that there is a woman who lives here in the city. I think her name is Juliana, and she works at a car dealership. He nodded. Your wife doesn't know much about her, so let's start with her. Tell me everything about Juliana. How you met. How long you made love to her. Everything. He started slowly, but told his story while sipping a bottle of beer that I handed him. He met Juliana about 4 months ago. I visited the car dealership where I sold my insurance and talked to her as a financial officer. She was beautiful, charming, with an absolutely amazing body, and he immediately decided that he had to possess her. Their meeting lasted most of the morning, and he invited her to lunch. He was surprised that she agreed so easily, and was even more surprised when, after lunch, she suggested that he invite her to dinner that evening, since her husband was out of town on business. They eventually returned to his hotel, and she gave him a night he would never forget. He started to describe what she had done for him, but I interrupted him. I don't need such details. So, how often did you meet Juliana? I asked. We've met about 8 or 9 times. Every time her husband was away, she called me, and if I could find time to come here, I would come. I even canceled dates with my other girls if she called. She's much better than any of them, he said with a grin. He got carried away with his story and forgot about his situation for a moment. He drank the rest of the beer and looked at the empty bottle. Can I have another one? What is it? He asked, pointing to the minibar. Take it easy, I told him. It would be a shame if I had to shoot you because of a misunderstanding. I think we've gotten a little closer. He grinned again and went over to get himself another beer. Do you want to? He asked, and I shook my head. He returned to his seat. So, I said, you're saying that Juliana took all the steps. Do you know if she did this a lot? I don't think so, but I'm sure I'm not her first. There was no sense of guilt. She wouldn't let me say anything bad about her husband, even though I screwed up today and called him a jerk. And she tore me to pieces, he laughed. Otherwise, she would be here now. It seems strange that she would be upset, considering what she's doing, I said thoughtfully. She shares her life, he explained. In her understanding, Juliana, who is the loving wife of her husband, I do not even know his name, she refuses to talk about him, is not the same Juliana who comes to make love to me. She doesn't see anything wrong with that, because they are 2 different people. I'm not sure her husband will take it that way, I said. Mentally, she may feel like 2 different people, but physically they are the same person. I take it you're not using protection? I know. Never. She says we don't need it. She said she was taking pills. What about sexually transmitted diseases? I asked. Considering that you're making love to half the country, did she even think about bringing something unpleasant home to her husband? I'm not sure it even occurred to her. Although I get tested regularly, and I'm clean, he said. It was a small consolation, but I still made a mental note to get checked out. Peter grimaced and put his hand to his chest. Has something happened? I asked solicitously. Indigestion. I didn't eat, but beer. He rubbed his left arm absently, then began to choke. His face turned purple and sweat started rolling off him. He clutched his chest with both hands. Help me, he said. Peter, look at me, I said. He looked up, his eyes scared. He was gasping for breath, and I could see that he didn't have long left. You should have stayed away from Juliana, I said. My wife. His eyes widened for a moment and then rolled back as he lost consciousness. It would take him another 10 or 15 minutes to die, and I used that time to make sure there was nothing in the room to indicate that anyone else was here besides him. I turned on the TV, but quietly, and rearranged the food that had been brought from the housekeeping service in front of it. When his body is found, It will turn out that he just had a fatal heart attack while he was having dinner and watching TV. Since he was already on blood pressure medication, I was sure that even if a full autopsy was performed, they would find enough heart disease to explain the heart attack, especially since he also took Viagra, and this is definitely taboo. I examined him again and made sure that he was actually dead. Then, after checking that the corridor outside was clean, hung a do not disturb sign on the door handle and returned to my room. The next day, when Juliana called me, it was already 5:30 p.m. "Hi, baby, how was your day?" "What is it?" she asked cheerfully. "Great," I said. "I've solved one of the unresolved issues, and I'm sure I can solve the last unresolved one. Listen, I have an idea. Since this is my last business trip, why don't we fly to Mexico for the weekend? I can meet you at the airport and we can celebrate the weekend, or maybe even turn it into a longer vacation. I'm sure you're entitled to a vacation, but even if you're not, just say you're going. It doesn't look like you need this job." I laughed. Juliana laughed too. "Sounds like a great idea. I'll talk to Barry tomorrow and see what he has to say. I'll call you tomorrow night and we can book tickets." "Great," I said. "So, what are you doing tonight?" "Everything is the same as before. I need to finish something, and I'll watch the TV series Life. He's really good. Isn't it about women who have affairs?" I asked. "I hope you don't have any such ideas." She laughed again. "He makes me horny when I can get to you again," she said. I looked at the time, knowing she thought she had dinner booked for 7 and it would take her at least 40 minutes to get there. "Listen, baby, the oven just beeped, so my dinner is ready. I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay?" She said. "Okay, enjoy your dinner and cheating," I said. "Bye, baby, I love you," she said. I hung up the phone. At 8:30, I heard a knock on the door of Peter's room. From the moment I hung up the Do Not Disturb sign, the maids did not enter the room, and I guessed that Juliana came to the restaurant, waited, and came to find out why he was late. The knock was repeated. 20 minutes later, I heard the lock squeak and the door opened. A hotel employee entered, followed by Juliana. When they saw Peter lying with his face buried in the frozen remains of last night's dinner, the employee rushed to him. Juliana stood in the doorway and looked at what was happening. "Is he dead?" "What is it?" she asked. The hotel employee felt for a pulse, but it was quite obvious that he was dead. His body was motionless. "Yes, he's dead." Without saying a word, Juliana turned and left the room. By the time the employee realized she was gone, she was already in the elevator and left the hotel. The police and ambulance were called, who, after rummaging in the room for a while, found his medicines. The doctors concluded that he had suffered a fatal heart attack, given his state of health and the way they found him. The police spoke to a hotel employee who told them that they entered the room at the request of a woman who came to visit the man, and they found him together. He did not know this woman, but he saw her earlier in the week. She came to visit him. However, the man had already been to the hotel before, and he had several visitors. After everyone left, I went and got my surveillance equipment, packed it up, and left the hotel in the morning. In the parking lot, I removed the GPS tracker from Peter's car, which was still parked there. On Saturday morning, I picked up Juliana from the airport, and we drove to the villa I rented. She squealed joyfully when she looked around and saw a private pool with sun loungers and said, "I'm going to change my clothes. Can we chat for a few minutes first?" "Jules?" I asked. She turned her head and looked at me. "You know I don't like it when you call me that," she said. "Why?" I asked. "You didn't seem to mind when Peter used that name." She turned pale, but decided to be bold. "Who is Peter? Do you know him?" "Peter, the insurance agent. The one you've been making love to for the last 4 months. The one you made love to on Monday night when you said you were so tired that you fell asleep and didn't call me," I said. "I don't know who you were talking to or what you heard, but," she began. I put a 20 by 25 photo on the table between us. It was the same photo that I took at the beginning, through the optical site, in which she is lying on her back, her eyes are dilated. She sank into a chair. "Oh," she said. "Oh," I asked. "Is that all you have?" "Oh." She shrugged her shoulders. "How long ago?" I asked. She looked at me steadily. "About 4 months." "I take it he wasn't the first? Do you really want to do this?" "What is it?" she asked. "Do what?" To find out the truth about your wife? Insults? Seriously? Are you that young? Then come on, get it out of your head. Call me a fool, a slut. Maybe you can find something original to name me and impress me. But before you start, I'd like you to know something. And what is it? Why did I do it? She said. I started saying that she did it because but then he stopped himself and made it clear to her that she should continue. We've been married a long time, haven't we? She asked, and I nodded. Can you tell me how many times on average a week we make love? What is it? She asked. I thought about it. Well, it's gone downhill with age, I began, but she interrupted. Really? Yes, at first we made love every day, sometimes 2 or more times a day. But as soon as we overcame this youthful exuberance, we began to make love at least once every 2 days, and sometimes more often. Love was and still is beautiful, and you're still the best lover I've ever had. But then you started going on a business trip, sometimes for a month. I'm used to receiving love almost daily, and here you expected me to go without it for weeks. I tried a few nuggets, even bought myself toys, but it wasn't that. It didn't satisfy my needs. One night I decided that since you're not here and I can't get love, I'll go to the gym and relieve the tension. I was so excited that I probably attracted half the men. They were like dogs in heat, and yes, I ended up going home with one of them. I found a way to satisfy the need that you aroused in me. Oh, yes, the next day I felt guilty. I was afraid that you would find out that you would be hurt and you would divorce me. After a while, I decided to adopt a new norm, but I needed to establish some precautions, so I created several rules. First of all, I never did it when you were at home. Not because I thought you'd catch me, but because you've always been my first and best lover. I didn't need anyone else if you were here. Secondly, I have never brought anyone to our house. I would never show such disrespect to you when there was another man in your bed. For the same reason, I have never allowed any of my other lovers to disrespect you. It seems that some men take pleasure in defaming husbands whose wives they make love to. If any of them started talking bad about you, I stopped it. She refused to see him again and even kicked some of them out of bed for it. Thirdly, I was regularly checked for sexually transmitted diseases. I didn't want to pass anything on to you. And before you say it, it's not just because that's how I could get caught. I didn't want to put you at that risk. I also made sure twice that I couldn't get pregnant. I used an intrauterine device and put birth control implants. When we were ready to have children, I stopped it. I have copies of the children's DNA tests, which you can read if you need proof. I knew that maybe you would find out about this and question the relationship of the children. And yes, it means that I've been doing it all the time we've been together. You turned me on so much that I just couldn't do without it. A day or two is still fine, but if more, then I needed at least some relief. That's all it was. Scratching the itch. I've never had any feelings for any of them. They were toys in the flesh, as far as I knew. The only man I've ever loved and been in love with is you. When you told me that this would be your last trip, I was overjoyed. Finally, I can have you at home, and for myself, I can stop looking for second-rate replacements. I won't need them because I'll always have the best one at home with me. My days of having to settle for second-rate are over. It seems rather ironic that what may have been my last time with another man turned out to be the time I was caught. Your last time? I said. Hey, these photos were taken on Monday. You said that you can't go without love for more than 2 days. So do you really want me to believe that you didn't go out on the side on the rest of the evenings? What about Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? She laughed a little. On Tuesday, he called me to tell me that he returned to the hotel, but began to speak ill of you. So I told him that everything was over between us, and I would not see him anymore. A little later, he called back to apologize. I forgave him, but said that he was done for the night, and we would see each other on Wednesday. He said he would invite me to dinner as an apology. So that call that came on Tuesday when we were talking, I asked, wasn't your mom? For the first time, she had the decency to look guilty. No, not her, she said softly. I hated lying to you. Not enough not to do it, I said. Her eyes widened. Wait, during that call, you called me Jules. I remember that it seemed strange to me. Did you know already then? What is it? She asked. The photos were sent to me on Tuesday morning. They were accompanied by transcripts of previous calls. She sighed again. I'm so sorry that you had to find out about this. It must be terrible. Let's not get sidetracked. You didn't make love to him on Tuesday, but what about the rest of the week? I asked. I wanted to know how his death affected her. He was supposed to meet me for dinner on Wednesday, she began. You mean when you were supposed to be watching a cheating series on TV? I asked with some irony. I really watched it, and it's good. I just didn't watch it that night. And no, it didn't give me any ideas. No matter how stupid it sounds, and please don't get angry when I say this, I haven't cheated in my mind. I was just satisfying a physical need. For me, it was like going to lunch with a friend. I need to eat, and you're not around to keep me company, so I'm going with a friend. I know this may be hard for you to accept, but that's how I perceived, and to some extent still perceive what I did when I made love to other men. You're stalling, I said flatly. Are you trying to avoid telling me what you were doing on Wednesday? Not at all, she said. As I said, we were supposed to meet for dinner, but he never came. I sat in the restaurant for 45 minutes, and I have to say that I was furious. I've never been framed before, so I decided to go to his hotel. When I got there, he didn't open the door, but I knew he was at the hotel because his car was parked in the parking lot. I asked the manager to come inside, and we found him face down in a dinner steak, dead as a nit. According to the doctors, he was taking blood pressure medication, but this stupid fool was also taking Viagra, which should never be done. He probably had a massive heart attack. At least he didn't die while he was using you, I said. It would be much more inconvenient. Oh, shit, I never thought about that, she said. It would definitely make a fuss. His poor wife would have found out about it. I think she already knew, I said. I suspect that she was the one who sent me the photos. Juliana nodded. At least I don't have to ask if you're going to date him again, I commented, and she smiled wryly. I'm not going to apologize for what I did, she said. That was what I had to do. But I'm really sorry that I hurt you and that you found out about it. I counted the days until you stopped going on business trips so that I wouldn't have to do it anymore, but I knew that as long as you went, it would continue. All I could do was minimize any consequences and hope that if you ever found out, your love for me would be strong enough for you to understand. Why didn't you come and talk to me? I asked. We could have thought of something. I could have done things differently, even taken you on trips with me. Deep down, I knew it was nonsense. I could never take her with me, but I needed to understand. I didn't want to be that kind of wife. A quibbler who demands that you provide a high standard of living and then complain about how you do it. You love your job, and we had a wonderful life together. I hadn't planned on doing this. I kind of got into it, and by then it was too late to take it all back. I stared at her for a long time, thinking. So, she said, what's going to happen now? I got up, went to the villa's kitchen and opened a bottle of wine, pouring each of us a glass and returning the bottle to the table. I handed the glass to Juliana and sat down wearily in an armchair, drinking half of it in one gulp. I don't know, I said. It just needs to be thought about properly. We've been together for so long, and I thought you loved me as much as I loved you. Yes, we had a wonderful love life, and yes, we made love often, but you weren't the only one who suffered when I left. I also went without love for weeks and even months. Yes, I had the opportunity to have lunch with other women when I was away, but I never did it. He remained faithful to our vows. I didn't even have any toys. I had to rely on the good old one. I waved my hand. I don't understand how you can be so consumed by your need that you are ready to betray everything that we have together, or promises, our vows. For what? Only for the sake of love. Are you going to report a love addiction? Do we need you to see a psychologist? She opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. Please, I've given you permission to speak, but at least do me the favor of listening to me a little. I leaned over and filled her glass, and then filled mine. I have so many questions. How can you share love so easily? Everything I've read says that this is what men do, not women, that women need love. How do you think I feel? You also said that you can't go without love for more than a couple of days in a row. What will happen with age? It is well known that men slow down with age, and in some women, sexual desire increases with age. Is this what I should expect? Am I really going to come home to find some stud deeply immersed in you when I can only get started twice a week because that won't be enough for you? How can I look at myself in the mirror every morning with at least some semblance of respect? knowing that all our married life you have been cuckolding me with other men. There have been dozens, if not hundreds, of them over the years. Besides, you say you've been getting tested regularly, but what's the point? You could have contracted and transmitted the infection before the test results came back. You could have given me anything, even HIV. This shit takes months to be discovered. You could have killed both of us. Where would our children be then? Her face twitched, and she absently rubbed her left arm. I smiled at her gently. Peter was a piece of shit, I said, but I think he eventually developed feelings for you. He told me that he even canceled a meeting with other mistresses when you called and said you were free. What? She said. When did you talk to Peter? Oh, we talked a little bit the night he died. You see, I was a little upset to see you making love to that fool, and I decided to guarantee that it wouldn't happen again. Now her face was flushed, and I could see that pain was beginning to form in her chest. What did you do to him? What is it? She asked. The same thing I just did to you, I growled. I killed that traitor. Say hello for me when you get to hell.